much better surface finish. Now, if my math is right, we should be at 41, and we are. Now that should be 38 millimeters. 38 on the dot. Now the finished dimension, or the finished thickness that I actually need, is 35.5 millimeters. But this leaves me 2.5 millimeters of wiggle room. All right, time to get this one off. Because in a minute I'm going to have to set up the vise again. So you might be wondering, what am I up to? Well, I'm in the process of truing up the stock for a lathe top slide build for a gentleman whose second-hand lathe that he bought to finish off his, hobby dream projects came with a bit of a surprise in that one of the dovetails is actually broken and has been somewhat ingeniously repaired, but not repaired very well. That said, he has supplied the material, which is well oversized and needs to be trued up and brought down to size. So at this point, I've got it to width. I'm now bringing it down to the final 70 millimeters by 38, and then I'll cut it into length on the power hacksaw, which you won't be seeing because I didn't opt to record that. So let's get on with this. Oh, and apologies, I seem to have had a microphone issue and no sound has been recorded, which is just a horrible thing. But anyway, I'll voice over where I need to. So here I am truing up the ends to get them nice and square, using a 20mm Sutton 2-flute end mill. This one is pretty old and really needs to go out for sharpening, as you'll see in a moment. It does not leave the best surface finish. So here I am truing up the other end. This is going to end up being the crank end of the top slide. And there's a few weld spots here, and these pretty much killed this mill outright. The surface finish just goes completely to trash after this. And I end up having to use a much too long 10mm carbide end mill, because otherwise it just was not going to work out. Now, this is that carbide end mill. It's got a 40mm cutting length, and I have to say I was really surprised considering how much I paid for it, which was quite a trivial amount, from that cheap Chinese site, which I remain nameless for the moment. This thing has done an inordinate amount of cutting for me and is still holding a brilliant edge, leaves a very good surface finish, and just keeps going and going and going. So sometimes you get more than you really do pay for, but it is a bit of a gamble, and I wasn't expecting it to survive what I bought it for, let alone to continue to keep on giving and giving. So I took this down just a little bit more just to get rid of that little bit of a surface blemish. I know most of it will end up milling out anyway, when I carve away all of the surplus material, but I figured best to have as good a starting point as I could. So I really just trimmed it back. I think I lost a quarter of a millimeter overall length. It's still 2 millimeters, I think, longer than it should be, but will work out quite nicely. As you can see, it does actually leave a pretty decent surface finish, for something being run in a way that it's not really designed to. But anyway, let's keep cracking on. So basically what I need to do is remove that which is outside these, and ultimately remove the center line section as well, but only to within about 21 millimeters of the end that's at bottom left of screen. So having found my edge, touched off, we're going to get rid of as much as we can in as few passes as we can. So we're going, from memory, I think we're doing 1 millimeter, but we're only going down about 10 millimeters. And so I'm just trying to line it up as close to that edge as I can, and we're just going to try and get rid of as much of it as quickly as we can. I think I ended up indexing these inserts after this bit of roughing was done, because I actually left it a little bit proud, so there was some excess material to be removed right at the end once everything else is done, so that I've got the option of leaving a much better surface finish. I have to say that this particular shell mill really is a trooper and does an amazing job. I would have preferred it to have an odd number of inserts, but 4 will just have to do, because I think you get less chatter with an odd number than you do with an even number. I'm not sure why that is, but it just seems to work out that way. So basically I'm just retracting back so that I can do another conventional pass, and it's a matter of rinse and repeat. So here I'm milling the front ways. So this is going to be the gib side of the top slide. And much like we did for the other side, we're going to take it down approximately 10.5 millimeters or so. Just touched off, going down for our cutting depth, and here we go. A fair bit of material to hog away. So this is the final pass, getting it down to depth. Now there will be another pass where I bring them both down to exactly the same depth, so I just re-mill the back and then mill the front at the same depth of cut, just to make sure that they are both exactly the same. Ideally, a lot of this could have been done on the shaper, and it would have worked a lot better on the shaper, to be honest. So at this point, I've removed that center piece of webbing, leaving just the little nub that's going to be the bearing support for the feed screw. Not sure why I'm mucking around with some of the swath, but anyway, stuff annoys me. Anyway, so the next step is to lay out and mill out that trough or pocket for the feed screw. So here I've started milling out that pocket. I'm doing it by the 3mm. Now literature says I should be able to do about a 5mm depth of cut, but I can't run the spindle fast enough to make that work. It should be up around 3000 RPM, and I can only get up to about 2000. So this is a little bit slower feed than it should be as well, because I'm just being a little bit cautious with this mill. But ultimately it actually does a really quite a good job of this. Clearing the swath is always going to be an issue. But anyway, it did the job, and as you'll see in a moment, did it quite well with a very nice surface finish. Much milling later, as you can see by the mountains of swath, I have the pocket hogged out, and I'm getting ready to start doing the relief for the dovetails, just to do the inset for that. Now here I am doing the gib side. So here I've started milling that out. I'm taking a 2mm depth of cut, the full 10mm or so depth of the dovetail. Is it a bit aggressive? I don't know, probably is. I've upped my coolant flow at this point as well, just because I felt that maybe it needed a little bit of help. Still leaving a very good surface finish, and it's just chugging along, albeit very noisy because of that stick out, which gives you quite a lot of resonance. So let's just keep going with this. And in a moment we'll start cutting the actual dovetail. So initially I started off at 2mm depth of cut, but realised it was a bit hard on the machine and on the cutter. Seemed to be a little bit of tool deflection, which I wasn't quite banking on. So I backed it off a little bit, and this took a lot longer than it should have. And ultimately, I think I ended up cutting just a hair too much. But that's okay, the gib has to be replaced anyway, and so that will be taken up with a replacement gib, because the old gib is bent and looks to have been shortened to accommodate where the break in the original top slide is, so that it wasn't catching when it was sliding through into the compound base. So here I'm just quickly cleaning up prior to using some gauge pins to check my progress. And essentially at this point I am done. I was aiming for 62.5. I ended up at 62 neat, which means that, as I said, I would have to do a new gib for this, which I was planning on doing anyway. This just means that it's going to be 4.5 instead of 4 millimeters, which is not a really big deal in the scheme of things, and should give the machine plenty of longevity after this anyway. So at this point I'm essentially finished with the heavy machining, and I just need to true up the top side of the slide to bring it into dimension. So this is me making a bit of a mistake because it's throwing the chips straight at me, and yeah, this was not fun, this bit. But anyway, I'd started, so I'm going to persevere with this. 1 millimeter depth of cut, and just going to take it up to the scribed line in the layout area, and then I'll work way to the front, thereby completing this cut. In total I had 3 millimeters to take off in this section. Prior to taking another 1.5 millimeters off the tool post end, which is to the right of the cutter at this point. Once I got through this bit, it was actually a lot easier because now the cutter is throwing the chips not directly at me. Live and learn. So here I'm doing the 1 millimeter drop down, just to bring the tool post pad down to the original height. This required 2 passes, one to get the 1 millimeter, one to get the last 0.5 millimeter out, and to try and leave the nicest surface finish that I could, because this is going to be visible. And I think I did a pretty good job. So for this particular pass, I did the transverse, but for the finishing pass I went straight across, out, and then came back in, as you'll see in a moment. I think this ultimately left a much nicer surface finish without that scoring from the transverse motion. Now the next big job after this is drilling some holes for the tool post, auxiliary mounting points, oilers, and to mount the feed screw, and to do the bearing housing for that as well. but I will do those at a later date, simply because I'm out of time this weekend. Unfortunately, there's only so many hours in the day. So as you can see, the surface finish is pretty good. Does need some pretty aggressive deburring, but that is just the way it is. I don't know what grade of steel this is, and something harder might have left the surface finish with less deburring required and better finish, but anyway. So that's where I'm going to leave off for this one. If you've enjoyed the video, hit the thumbs up. Feel free to share on social media. And if you haven't already subscribed, I'd love it if you hit the subscribe button. When you do, don't forget, ring the notification bell. So get out to your shop. Have some fun. Work on a project. But whatever you do, stay safe, and I will catch you for the next one.